We all call this place home. And this is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. It marks the day of the beginning of the environmental movement across the globe. I'm Denise Rollard Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer, and your host for this special edition of WIN TV. And we hope you'll join us in our special celebration of Earth Day. We know the environmental movement is a vast and large, and more often than not, includes people who don't look like you and me, African Americans. We are so often left out of the conversation about the environment. But I'm proud to say to you today that we have among us leaders who just seek justice for our communities most impacted by environmental racism. Today, in conjunction with the publication of our 7th annual sustainability issue that came out last week and is still on newsstands, and you can find it at WashingtonInformer.com, we're holding our own house party, so to speak, to celebrate Earth Day. We're bringing in people from organizations who spend their lives trying to keep our communities clean and in check, no matter which zip code you live in. So stick with us as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. District of Columbia, we've been very fortunate to have not only a former city council member, a resident, and a true advocate for Earth Day, a former council member, Tommy Wells, who is the director of the Department of Energy and Environment, and who's been a longtime supporter of the Washington Informer sustainability issue, and as I said, a true advocate for Earth Day. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Denise, and thank you so much for you and the Informer, your leadership. And I look forward each year to the sustainability issue. I think that the level of honesty and trust that our community has in you and the Informer, so that people don't believe that climate change is a hoax or anything, trust you. And that's why, I know that this is something that's close to your heart, but thank you very much for your leadership and for the Informer.
Well, thank you. That's the best commercial we could have had all year, so I appreciate that. And one of the things that I want to ask most of our guests is what got you into this whole environmental movement per se? I mean, I know it's a job, but it's personal for you too. And how'd you get involved?
Well, it's really an accountable way of life, that we know that the things that we do has an impact. As you remember, when I was on the council, I passed the bag bill. And when I went through all communities in Washington, especially to senior centers east of the river, people hate trash. It's part of value. It's a culture that we don't like seeing, whether the nature be our front yards or the nature be the river, that people don't like seeing trash. It's disrespectful to our communities and disrespectful to our environment and the planet. So it's really about accountable living. And that's a value that I know you share.
So with today being Earth Day, is there something special despite the fact that we're all inside? But I'm going to say, and you'll see a little video that I did later in the show as I walked along the Anacostia River, which is still a very beautiful place to go to despite some of the things that we see there. But how was the city acknowledging Earth Day?
Well, we're asking people to obviously celebrate Earth Day from home. Take the time to look at, for example, we have a whole series of Solar for All videos that you can find online, and it's under doee.dc.gov, Solar for All. And the name on there is Solar Stories. And that is where we're using solar power from across the city to provide our residents that need help with their power bills. We're doing it through deploying solar, and we're celebrating that. Look at it online. But as you know, down at Oxen Run, that's going to be the largest solar deployment on a brownfield in almost any city in America. And that will help cut the power bills in half for almost 750 of our households that live all around that neighborhood.
Yeah, I live not too far from there. And I saw those solar panel, what I call the solar panel farm, coming up. I know it's still under construction, but it's sort of exciting to see. And it's also exciting to see so many residents of the District of Columbia now putting solar rooftops. And does that really make a difference in not only saving the environment, but saving costs?
Absolutely. It will cut the power bills in half for the subscribers that are have to show that they're lower income and they're from that neighborhood. That solar array, again, 750 households will have their power bills cut in half by that solar farm. And that's an area where the ground unfortunately has petroleum in it.
Yeah.
It's not healthy. It's a brownfield. So to be able to use that is important. And then, as you know, we've been providing free solar panels on top of our residents, especially our seniors, to help them. And we also repair their roofs. We do about 100 homes per year where we put solar panels, we repair the roof, put it there. And for many, it almost takes their power bill to zero.
When you go back and think about the plastic bags, and I know that they're still out there, and I know that you can still get them, and I know that there's often a charge for them. I don't know how people have been diligent that they've been in actually following the rules, but what's your take on it? And when I go down to the park, I don't see bags, but I see lots of plastic bottles, and we're going to talk
That's
a little bit about the river as well. But
That's
how's that
exactly
going?
right. It's been very successful. And two things about it that are, special. Obviously, that we've reduced the amount of disposable single-use plastic bags that are in our waterways, like the Anacostia River, by 70%. But it also raises about 2 million a year that we then use for groups, volunteer groups, groups that employ our young residents, especially east of the river, to do things like put in trash traps to catch other trash from going into the river. And so we also provide free boat rides so people can see the river. It's redeploying those funds from the bag bill to clean up the Anacostia River. Like you said, you can walk along the river and nature's coming back. Anacostia River, we're not there yet to be fully swimmable and fishable, hopefully by 2025, but it's a success story in America to show what can be done. And Anacostia River is a symbol, not only for past discrimination, but it's also a symbol for what can be done when we work together. And the bag bill is part of that.
So lastly, Tommy, what are some new initiatives that are coming out of your department? Anything new that residents need to know about or can be a part of?
Well, one of the things that I'm excited about is that the mayor has established, we're only the third city in America to do this, a new office of urban agriculture, recognizing that people like to grow their own food, recognizing that there's a lot of things related to agriculture, not just community gardens, but many people have the history of their grandparents and those that have planted food and great food coming out of the grounds, but we want it to be safe. And we want to help with that. And it's a way, it's not going to solve the food deserts, but it is a way to connect children more closely to where their food comes from to eat healthier. For the Office of Urban Agriculture, again, the mayor is very visionary to say, you know what, just because we're a city doesn't mean we don't grow food. And
Right.
it's an exciting initiative.
Well, I know that this COVID-19 thing, pandemic, has people doing some of the things that they used to do a long time ago. I mean, what's old has become sort of new again. And I've talked to so many folks who are growing food again and going back to farmers and getting food from the people who actually grow the food. So I'm glad that the site is a place where they can go and get information. And I want to thank you so much for what you're doing. And give us the website again. How can people learn more about your office?
It's DOEE at dc.gov. It also has a portal on that website that we call Green Pathways for internships, for jobs. We've become a major employer, and it's something that's very important to the mayor and to me that we hire our local residents, and especially residents from east of the river, to give them opportunities in this green economy that's coming along. So that's at doee.dc.gov. And also you can learn about volunteer activities, about cleaning up along the river, about how to volunteer for citizen science, like on Kingman Island. We do frog counts this time of year. We listen, everybody hears the frogs out there at night, but you learn how to differentiate between which frogs are what. And we do a frog count. So there's a lot of ways to get involved and to learn more about the environment, especially for our young people, but really for everyone.
So as the weather gets better, it's not a bad idea to just throw those masks on and those gloves and stay 6 feet away and go explore the earth.
Last thing I'll say, Denise, is that while many activities have been shut down for now, you can still fish in the District of Columbia. Now, use your 6 feet distancing, but to get a fishing license in DC, just go to dc.gov or doee.dc.gov. It's 2 clicks, and if you're over 65, it's free. If you're younger than 16, it's free. But otherwise, it's just $10 to local residents to get a fishing license. And we've got a lot of fish in our rivers, Potomac, Anacostia, and in the Channel. And so it's a great way to just relax, meditate, go fishing.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Maybe I'll see you down there if I get a fishing rod and a license.
Absolutely.
I mean, thank you so much for your time. Happy Earth Day and stay safe. All righty.
Thank you.
Boy, I am so unhappy with what's happening with Broccoli City, but great programs don't die. They just sort of, you have to put them on suspension for a minute and talk about what would have been and what will be. So we're going to do that with our host, who is going to take over at this point for this segment of the program, the publisher of WI Bridge, our supplement to the Washington Informer that serves the millennial community, Lafayette Barnes IV. Lafayette, welcome to the show.
We can't hear you.
Lafayette, can you put your, take stuff on? Oh, there you go. All right, you there?
I'm back. Sorry about that. Yep.
All right, no problem, no problem.
Thank you for having me.
Good. So, take it from here.
All right. How's it going? I know Broccoli City has been taking a couple punches lately, but everybody's hoping that things work out. So how are you guys holding up?
Man, we just to your point, Lafayette, really just kind of working out all the details in terms of we did reschedule the date for October 4th, which is a Sunday. A lot of people were like, yo, why y'all do it on a Sunday? But just so everybody knows, all the tours, everything in that industry as far as music, everything has been kind of pushed back. So we figured doing it on a Sunday, we'll be able to retain all the talent that we had on the original lineup.
Yeah, no, that's great. Everybody's looking forward to, maintaining support. It's a great thing for the city. Everybody loves Broccoli City. So, wish the best,
absolutely.
As far as that. I wonder, like, during this COVID-19, sort of era, I guess, stay at home era, do you see any change in, environmental justice efforts? Like, what do people still care about the same things? Is it all about, planting more trees, or is there something else we need to be worried about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when it comes to Broccoli City, one of the things that we've always been focused on, Lafayette, and I think this is community, right? Is self-government, because the festival started off as an Earth Day festival. And one of the things that we were always implementing into people is, what are you putting in your body? Right? Like, what are you eating? What, how are you taking care of yourself without being preachy? Right. So I think those same principles kind of align now, even more so now, because if we learned a little bit about the COVID, we're seeing that it's attaching to people who already had health problems, you know what I'm saying, previously. So it's like, the first thing is getting yourself together. You know what I mean? So I think that Broccoli City, we've kind of always been on that alignment, and we're working now, Lafayette, to see if we can put together some sort of a town hall, you know what I mean, with folks like yourself, all the way down to different influencers in the DC area, so we can more so get awareness on what we need to be doing to be taking care of our bodies first, you know what I mean, which will then help the community. And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That's great. Actually, it's perfect pivot to my next question, because there's certain people that we covered in the bridge as far as like Kepras, they provide healthy meals, and my man Chris Bradshaw from Dreaming Out Loud. Of course, Jillian Griffith, with the things that she's doing with Giant, as far as nutrition goes. So I mean, I wonder, like, why are millennials so interested in the environment anyway? Like, why how is Broccoli City a popular sort of theme,
Man, I think it's just because of the whole not preachy type of thing. It's like, listen, this is what we doing, and you either gonna be about it or that's cool. I don't think nobody is like pressuring nobody to do anything, if that makes sense, Lafayette. And I think that we do care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a little older, obviously, you can tell, you know what I mean? I'm a little older than probably you, but you care though. Like these kids care, and I think they just see the world way, way different. And we're just excited to kind of be that incubator, right? So we've been sitting here just trying to figure out, Lafayette, how do we do things like what we're doing right now? Like me and you having these conversations. So I've been talking to a lot of good people, and I actually have talked to the Bridge before. You know what I'm saying? Y'all have always held us down. Y'all have been a part of our events in the past. So y'all were going to be some folks that we were going to reach out to as well and figure out how, yet again, do we bring each other together to maybe get some awareness, and not coming from us, but coming from folks that, work in whether that be, the medical field, anything education wise, more so just about the awareness.
Certainly.
Yes, sir.
That's great. I think, not everybody's sitting at home. People have a lot of time, to think about, a lot of the themes that you're discussing. So, I certainly think it's a time to be taken advantage of. And as you talked about, with the digital conferencing, I think that's, something a lot of companies are, putting into their their workflow.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like, people were avoiding the digital aspects. So I wonder, is that something that you guys are thinking about doing more of? Like,
absolutely, Lafayette. You hit it right on the head, bro. Like, the digital side of things is great because now we can get probably bigger names to be a part of the conversation because they don't have to leave home or whatever the case may be. But my only question to this whole thing is nothing will kind of replace being in the mix with somebody, like talking to folks. So that's always going to have to be an adjustment, I think. But in terms of just information and us seeing each other and keeping the conversation going, like what you were talking about, I think that the digital platforms, they're the way to go. Because I think they're going to still be just as popular when we go back to regular.
Yeah. Well, I think we're on the same page at the Bridge. We're looking at ways that we can increase, our website traffic, and we definitely want people to visit that, wibridgedc.com.
Yes,
I remember we covered, as you mentioned, we first covered you guys in 2018. We actually had you guys on the cover. So if you want to go, you can also check that out on our site too. But otherwise, I would definitely wish the best for you all. And
thank you.
We always going to support and stay in contact. And, I appreciate, having this time to be able to speak to you.
Man, thank you so much, Lafayette. And we could definitely touch, offline as well. But just to echo what you were saying, man, during this time, I think that what's so awesome is us as young, especially African-American males, that we're using this time wisely, whether that be to connect with each other, learn a new skill, continue to develop ourselves. And I think that in itself is community. Community is the earth. And that's what Earth Day is us taking care of this right here in our families, this, that, to the third. So thank you guys so much for having me, Lafayette. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Washington Informer, for everything you guys do and just keeping everybody hip and informed.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. All right.
All right.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. Back to you.
So that was fantastic, Lafayette. And I want to say that we were talking to Brandon McCurchin, right? City. And I'll tell you, the energy was like all the way there. I don't know if I can pick up the ball and keep it as live as you all did, but a great interview, some great comments. We're getting some great shout outs on social media. Folks are watching us all over the country. And I think that Broccoli City, how long have you been engaged with Broccoli City? You brought it to my attention.
Yeah, I've definitely been going to Broccoli City since the first Broccoli City. A lot of the people that are some of the organizers, I've been having a close friendship with. So, always been a good supporter of Broccoli City.
Well, I think it was cool that they brought it, to Ward 8. It's been over down by the what is it, the stadium, RFK Stadium. It's grown. It's gotten really huge. And, this is just a little period, a little comma in their storyline, and we're going to keep it going. So looking forward to the next copy of The Bridge.
Yep, next copy of The Bridge will be out next Thursday. So, keep your eyes open. We're going to be talking about pivoting, just the same thing we talked to Brandon about. How can you, sort of navigate this new environment of working from home and, just having less access. How can you still maintain your income? We're going to be having a few articles around that theme. So, look out for it. You can check us out on WI Bridge DC on Instagram and see everything that's happening.
So maybe we'll launch a WI Bridge show right after this, so that you all can talk to, because that pivot is going to be a great show, and people in our viewer audience as well as our print audience really need to know what folks are doing. So looking forward to seeing a Bridge TV coming up soon. Yep,
looking forward to it. Sounds great.
All right. Take care. Okay. So here we are. It's Earth Day. We're celebrating Earth Day, the day that it's not the day that the Lord made, but it's the day that we finally acknowledged how great what this planet that He's given us and what we need to take care of it. And I'm so happy. I think we can bring Carolyn Brewer on now, who's with the Audubon Naturalist Society, and also she's chair of the Taking Nature Black. Carolyn, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me this time?
Yeah. I can. How are you?
I am well. Thank you. And you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for joining us. And like I asked before I get into what all that you're doing, I think the number one question I'd like to ask is, what introduced you into getting involved into this environmental movement?
Well, as I stated in the excellent supplement that you guys put out on sustainability, I have been an outdoor child all of my life. So I've always loved being outside and going for walks in the woods or trails. And so when I got the opportunity to be communications director for the Audubon Naturalist Society, it was something I leapt at. Because I knew it meant that I could spend more time outside. I could learn more about how to identify the trees and the flowers and the animals that are part of our environment that are essential to our ability to live and breathe and have fresh air and clean water. So it was just a joy to be able to become part of a team that is committed to year-round, introducing us to nature, helping us protect nature, and helping us enjoy nature.
So now are you from DC?
I am not from DC, but I've been here for more than 15 years and I love it. It's like my second home.
Where's home?
Home is Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I am from the same state as the Jackson 5, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of because I grew up with it.
All right. As a matter of fact, on our quarantine play mix that you can hear at the Washington Informer website, the first song is I think it's called Mother Earth or something by Michael Jackson. So you all must have something growing really well out there in Indiana. Yeah. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about the
So the Audubon Naturalist Society is a 123-year-old environmental organization. It got started even before the National Audubon Society, which most people are more familiar with, but it started out as the Audubon Society of the District of Columbia. So its base was right in DC, and it started at a time and really grew at a time when people were really open and warm to protecting the environment. At one point, Teddy Roosevelt held meetings of this all volunteer organization in the White House. So it has a real a strong legacy in DC. Rachel Carson was a member. She was a member of the board. She was a board president, and she was the one who wrote the seminal work, Silent Spring, that actually brought us the Environmental Protection Agency, which up until this current administration had been a strong force in helping to protect the environment.
Exactly, yes. And so then you went off and then you created something that you call taking nature black, or you're part of something called taking nature black. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Because like I said in the beginning, you know, when we think about the environment, I mean, I think Black folks were the original environmentalists, but you know, this movement sort of passed us by. We weren't connected, but you know, you're making that connection. Tell us about it.
Well, the wonderful thing is Black people, African Americans, have always been a part of the environment. We are the original environmentalists when it comes to what was happening in nature in this country. And so the challenge has been that when the media talk about environmentalists, when people think about environmentalists, the images that are out there are not images of people of color. And so Taking Nature Black was designed to rectify that problem, to make sure people understood that we have African Americans working in all aspects of the environment. We're gardeners, we're farmers, we're scientists. You know, we've got George Washington Carver in our ranks. He was one of the foremost environmentalists in this country and in the world. We got Harriet Tubman, who people don't understand, was an environmentalist. She understood the outdoors like no one else of her time. You know, there was no way she could have made all those trips from Maryland to New York and Canada if she didn't understand the outdoor world. So we have an incredible legacy of environmentalism, and Taking Nature Black is a conference that happens every 2 years to celebrate African Americans, particularly in Maryland, Virginia, and DC, who are out there as forest rangers, as park rangers, who are youth educators, who are naturalists, who are gardeners, who are people involved in renewable energy, who are doing all kinds of really incredible work in the environment all year long. And we want to raise awareness of the work that they're doing, of the expertise that they bring to this field. So thank you for shining a light on Taking Nature Black and helping us to share our story of the role that African Americans have in protecting the environment.
So before we forget, because, you know, I might forget, but how can folks get in touch with you?
They can find us at anshome.org. That's the letter A, the letter N, the letter S, standing for Audubon Naturalist Society, and then the word home.org. And there you can search Taking Nature Black, and you will find all kinds of information about the 3 conferences that we've had over the last 4 years. You will see even music videos. We have incorporated music as a part of our programming. We've incorporated storytelling. So it's not just a celebration of the science of the environment, but also the culture of the environment. So I'm so excited that you guys are going to have your playlist. I hope you've got Marvin Gaye and Mercy, Mercy Me on there.
We have all, I mean, we have so much. Well, I mean, it's a lot of music, and it's very diverse, you know, in its sound. So I really do want folks to go to the website and check it out and sort of let it play for the day. And our social media person, Tatiana, I think, is just sending some songs out periodically. But, you know, we're getting a lot of energy around our conversation, and we've got a couple of folks who are really happy to hear about what you all are doing. And of course, talking about, I mean, my buddy Ada Nago Brown, originally from Cameroon, but does a lot of tours around the continent of Africa. Yeah, she's talking about, she's giving you a shout out about how we were always involved in the environment. And so many others. I think we got one of our writers who's out in, I think she's in Wisconsin. Terry, where are you from? I keep forgetting. But anyway, she's just giving you a shout out too about what you're doing. So it's really good to hear. So your conference, was it scheduled for this year?
It was in February. It's in February every year.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were able, it was February 27th this year. So we were able to celebrate just before the whole pandemic hit. And every year we've more than doubled our participation. And we're going to start a Facebook group pretty soon. So we're going to find all kinds of ways for people to be a part of it. We're going to do some quarterly events so that people can hear from our speakers. We had 43 speakers this year, and that is just from DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Just incredibly dynamic people. We had millennials. I'm so glad that you guys have partnered to share information with millennials from a millennial perspective. We had Jerome Foster, who is 18 years old, attends a high school in DC. And if you think Greta Thunberg is something, you need to check out Jerome Foster. He was our environmental champion. He has been accepted into Harvard and MIT, but the young man really is conscious of who he is as an African-American young man in this country. And so all the generations were there, up to one of our panelists, his mom is in her mid-80s. So she was there and participating with us. So
wonderful. I just got a comment from Terry. She told me she's in Wisconsin with the cheese and the cows. So
that's Western girl.
Yeah. Let me ask you. I mean, we're all sort of confined right now, right? And saying to stay masked up and gloved and elbows and whatever, which is important. I don't want to say whatever. Very important so that we all can stay safe and healthy. But what are some of the things that you think people should be doing, even within their own homes, to make their environment safer and cleaner? I know we need to clean up, but what else?
Well, I think, just looking on your home, I think this is an important time when we haven't been able to consume as much as we typically consume, to look at our consumption habits, to look at whether or not the materials that we're using are recyclable or not, or they can be composted or not. This is a really good time to survey what your lifestyle is like, because that's so important to helping to protect the environment, to protect this precious earth that we only have one of. And, it's really been under duress for a long time. And the administration right now is not doing anything to help that. So I think just taking a survey of your living habits and whether or not those habits are in support of the natural world, which we all need, and it's the way we live. And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, from a personal standpoint, once you got involved in the movement, or not involved because it's your life, but is there anything I think that's most significant that is your normal practice that might be informative to us? I mean, I know some people, for example, everybody's rushing out to get toilet paper and paper towels. Toilet paper is essential. Paper towels, I don't know. But what about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. This situation is helping me to examine my daily habits and finding ways. I think when you open at the beginning, you kind of alluded to the fact that African Americans have always found a way. We know how to make a way out of no way. And so this is the time where we can sit back and reflect on whether or not something is a need or something is a want. And so I'm using cloth towels much more. I ran out of paper towels a couple weeks ago, so I don't need paper towels. I can use cloth towels. And so I'm helping to save the planet that way. And there's so many other ways, if we're cooking at home more often. And then if we're using fresh fruits and vegetables, I love smoothies. So you can take the scraps from fresh fruits and vegetables and put those in a blender, and you can make smoothies with them. So there's a lot of ways to conserve, to recycle materials and use materials. And so that's part of my process right now, along with making sure I get outside every single day and just breathe in the fresh air, appreciate the fact that we have trees and flowers that are in bloom right now, and that all of this supports our ability to live more healthier lives.
Well, Carolyn, I want to thank you so much for being with us and for being part of our sustainability issue. We're going to continue to follow you and share the information, the good news that you have to share with our community so that we can have, like you said, a safer, cleaner community. And you've got a lot of fans out there. Before I let you go, I just want to, because I'm a fan of hers, Tambra Ray. I want to thank you for sharing with us the fact that you're going to be speaking on consumption sometime soon at Consumption, speaking on food waste, Earth, what is it? Optimism Digital Summit with the Smithsonian Museum. So make sure you send us the information on that, Tamara, so we can share it with our readers and our viewers. Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh,
and we hope to have you back one day soon when we can talk about, we're really outside and what's happening next.
absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and I love what you guys are doing. So keep going.
So we're rolling right along. This is supposed to be a 30-minute show, you all, but we're already into like 45 minutes. And I think we have, one or two guests yet? Because there's so much. Well, mind you, we're a part of a global conversation. Earth Day is happening all around the world. And we hope that there are people even outside of the United States that are watching our program, because this is just our little bit of a way of showing that we care about the environment. And so I think our next guest is, who's that? Oh, this is exciting. Yes. We're going to have Nathan Harrington of Ward 8 Woods. Man, I just have to say, one of the things that does frustrate me is the fact that, Ward 8 for a long time used to be a dumping ground. And people would just come and dump stuff in alleys and in our parks and all over the place. And I think there's been a lot of effort on behalf of a lot of people to change that and make our communities cleaner. But we have to give a great shout out to Ward 8 Woods, to Nathan Harrington and his crew of folks that have been out there cleaning up that park up along Malcolm X and some other places. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Yeah. I've seen you. I've seen your folks out there. I don't know if we've met, but I am so happy for what you've been doing in the community. Can you share with us what your program's all about?
All right. Well, Ward 8 Woods Conservancy, we usually just call it Ward 8 Woods for short, started in summer of 2018, and our mission is to increase the health, the beauty, and the public enjoyment of the more than 500 acres of forested parkland in Ward 8. And that includes Fort Stanton Park, Shepherd Parkway, the woods along Suitland Parkway, and then it includes Oxen Run, particularly the federal portion of Oxen Run, which is between Southern Avenue and 13th Street.
I've been a resident of Ward 8 for more than 30 years, and I'm surprised that this little triangle in front of my office is considered a federal park. Mm-hmm. And I know that, a lot of us have been wondering how the feds kind of take care of it or just have abandoned these parks. And the article that you ran in the sustainability issue is very eye-opening to me, particularly when you raise the fact that so much of our parkland now has been destroyed for development of a highway.
Yeah.
But first of all, let me ask, as I asked before, how did you get involved in sort of this whole environmental movement? And secondly, why Ward 8?
Well, a lot like Caroline, I grew up in close contact with nature. I was born in DC and grew up in Rockville, Maryland, on a street that was actually a parkway, and there was a creek bed that ran through the middle of it with some trees, and that was kind of my playground growing up. I think I was about 7 years old when I noticed that every time there was a big rain, there would be trash that was not thrown there, but it was thrown somewhere upstream, probably on the street, got washed into the sewers and then into this creek. And, once the water receded, it would just be left on the banks of the section of the creek where I hung out. And so I asked my brother if he could help me clean it up. And we did, and it kind of went from there. I was an Eagle Scout. I went to church camp, the Quaker church camp. And, it was just always a source of strength for me. I was a teacher for 10 years. I taught at Duval High School, Oxon Hill High School, and at Moton Elementary here in Ward 8. But starting in 2011, actually under the inspiration of Philip Pennell, I hope you're listening. Shout out to Phil Pennell. I was attending the Congress Heights Community Association. I moved to Congress Heights in 2009. And was looking for a way to contribute. He asked me if I would chair a committee to work on Shepherd Parkway, which is that parkland along Malcolm X Avenue and Martin Luther King Avenue, and stretching for more than 2 miles along 295, covering that whole hillside. So that was the genesis of Committee to Restore Shepherd Parkway. We had volunteers every second Saturday of the month since 2012, mobilized over 2,000 volunteers, and people were always asking, residents would thank us for the work that we were doing, and they would say, hey, are you hiring? And I always had to say, well, no, but you can volunteer. And people said, well, you know, I'm not going to volunteer when what I need is a job to support my family. Help of Anna Costia coordinating council, of which Philip Pinnell is the director. We applied for and got a community stormwater solutions grant. Tommy Wells was talking earlier about all the things that are paid for using money from the bag fees. Well, community stormwater solutions grant program is one of those. We called it Ward 8 Woods, and we advertised a job opportunity for Ward 8 residents, especially people who had barriers to employment, having trouble finding other things, either because of disabilities, lack of experience, lack of references. So we got like 70 applicants. And at first there was a lot of turnover. We hired people, they came in, realized this wasn't for them. But that was in July of 2018. By September, we had this core of 4 people, which is the same 4 that we have today. And in that year and a half of work, they've removed about 200,000 pounds or 100 tons of trash from the woods. And we've cut invasive vines from about 400 trees, I think. And what we're starting to work on now is trails. You know, if you go to Rock Creek Park, you have many, many miles of trails that are well maintained, and it's like this big amenity for people that live there. In Ward 8, though, people don't really see these woods as an amenity or even as parkland because they're not accessible and they're not inviting. Yeah.
Well, that's just it's been fantastic. And I mean, what are some of the things you find in these woods? I know the typical tires. That used to be a big issue over here.
Mm-hmm.
People would just come and dump tires. But what kinds of things are you finding that people are just dumping?
Everything, you name it. A lot, you know, DPW will pick up, you know, household items and appliances, but not if it's a commercial property. They won't pick up car parts or construction materials. So you have some small time people who do auto work or they renovate houses. With Ward 8 gentrifying, you have a lot of older houses that are being remodeled. Some of these contractors will just go in there, got an old house, so they'll tear out the carpets, the kitchen counters, the shingles from the roof, the drywall, the wood framing, you name it, and they will charge in the time of actually driving it up to Fort Taunton Waste Transfer Station and disposing of it legally. So construction materials are a big issue. Car parts are a big issue. And then with some of our apartment buildings that border one of our wooded areas, especially along Suitland Parkway, some of these management companies don't provide adequate dumpster capacity. So you might have a dumpster that fills up in 1 week, and then it's another 2 or 3 weeks before it gets emptied. So instead of piling stuff out next to the dumpster, some people will just throw it in the woods behind the building.
You know, in the article that we published in our sustainability issue last week, you used the word environmental racism. I mean, this is something that it sounds like you have seen and you've labeled. I mean, can you explain what that means or what you've observed?
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, I'm just saying that in the article in the sustainability issue that where you wrote a really nice piece, but you did talk about your observations of environmental racism. You used that as a term, and so can you talk about why you think or evidence of why you think this exists, or evidence of
well, someone mentioned earlier. Yeah. You know, someone mentioned earlier that the Ward 8 was a dumping ground for a long time, and still is in the minds of some people. If you were to go to Rock Creek Park or the C&O Canal, people would simply not attempt to do the kind of dumping that they do here because they know they would get caught. And so that lack of enforcement is part of the disparity. I mentioned earlier the lack of trails and accessibility, even signage. You know, if the Park Service is really spread thin, they're grossly underfunded. They have billions of dollars worth of unmet maintenance needs at parklands across the country. Even if you go to the National Mall, the tidal basin, you see how it floods every time there's a big rain and there's trash and dead fish all over the place. And that's a place that attracts millions of tourists every year. So they don't even have the resources to properly maintain those kinds of places. So that is even less of a priority. And it just doesn't get any attention at all. So people say, you know, the government should be taking care of it. It's their land. And I agree, they should. We spent a lot of time with the Committee to Restore Shepherd Parkway, prodding and lobbying the Park Service to make improvements to Shepherd Parkway. And we didn't have a whole lot to show for it. So we kind of came full circle to saying, you know what, the government owns it, but who is the government? We are the people. This is public land. Maybe we need to step up and take care of it ourselves. It's a lot of work, but there's a lot of people that need work. And so that was the genesis of our Park Steward program.
So when you go through and you collect all of this, you know, this trash and junk and other stuff, does the government help? Do they come in and sort of and move it to where it's supposed to go? Is that something you and your volunteers do? What happens with the?
Yes. Typically we move it out of the woods, and then either DC Public Works or National Park Service will come pick it up. We've had some issues with that. We've had residents tell us, I'm sure some of y'all watching have seen big piles of stuff out on the street or on Suitland Parkway that's just been sitting there for a week or 2 weeks or longer. And we're really frustrated with that. We don't have our own trucks. We don't have the ability to haul that stuff out on our own. We bring it out of the woods, and then we're reliant on those government agencies. And they, like I said, you know, I think Park Service is supposed to have something like 5 dump trucks for this unit. And they, last I was told, they only had 2 because people retired and there was a hiring freeze. They weren't able to replace the truck operators. They have trucks that need repair, but they don't have mechanics in the shop to fix them and get them back on the road. So we're actually really thankful to Public Works, and because they have kind of stepped up and helped us with removing a lot of trash, even though it's on federal land, which is technically not their responsibility. But, you know, DOE being one of our grantors, I think they've convinced DPW that this is something worth supporting, because it's really overdue. You know, these dumps have been like this for decades.
So one of the things that I wanted to share, Ron Burke, you know, who works with us here at the Informer and you know, helps to make sure that we get these special issues published, wanted to give you a thank you for participating in our sustainability issue. And I've also heard from Frances Mellon, who said it's great to see you, that you are a voice of Ward 8, and that you always find time to attend the ANC and Civic Association meetings. And so I don't know how many volunteers you recruited from that group, but we hope that we can get more volunteers for you, as well as individuals that will provide some financial support that's equivalent to the service that you and your volunteers and the 4 employees you have are giving to this community. I also wanted to acknowledge, and I had hoped that we could have gotten them on the show, is one of the guys that you talked about in the article. You talk about barriers to employment, but he came and I guess was a returning citizen, came and worked with you, and now he's loving the work that he's doing. I'm going to give him a shout out. I don't remember his name.
Absolutely. But. Yes, Robert Carpenter. Robert Carpenter. He lives on Hartford Street in Garfield Heights. And we have another guy, Christopher Williams, who also lives in that same area. And then we've got Shockey Taylor, and Jamoke and Diggins. Those are the 4 who are in our crew right now. And they do amazing work. You know, it is physically demanding. You know, there's a lot of heavy lifting. There's walking up and down steep inclines. Actually, interestingly enough, winter is one of the best times to do this because you don't have to deal as much with poison ivy, bees, ticks, mosquitoes. Actually kind of see the trash more easily. And, you know, and you're not having to, you know, you're not sweating buckets and getting all dehydrated and overheated, you know, but we work year round. We have to deal with all of that. Also thorns, you know, one of the invasives trying to get under control is called multiflora rose. It has gigantic thorns that will really tear your flesh asunder if you're not careful. So, you know, sometimes I try to wear protective clothing, but then I get hot. You know, I come home with all these scratches on. People say, "What's going on?" So yeah, we sacrifice our bodies for the environment a little bit because somebody's got to do it.
Well, that was a great recruiting message. I'm sure.
No. You know, there's so much land out there, and the landscape is really varied. So some areas are really difficult to work in because they're overgrown with thorns and they're steep, but there's also areas that are really like open and beautiful and a lot easier to work in. So we have you know, we have different opportunities for different levels of volunteers.
So how are you celebrating Earth Day?
Actually, I'm plugged in with Extinction Rebellion. It's a local, worldwide environmental movement. Their DC chapter is doing some tree planting and planting of new gardens today. So a little while later, I have some, you know, because it's social distancing, we're volunteering 1 or 2 people in each place. But I have some coming over, and we're going to plant a peach tree and an apple tree in a neighbor's yard who asked for that.
Nice, wonderful. So
and yeah, even though our crew is
say that
Hello?
again. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can't hear.
Did we lose?
I think somebody else is talking. I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, someone. Okay, all right. But so you're going to go plant some fruit? Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to celebrate the Earth Day. Any recommendations for? Well, and that's the last thing I would ask. I mean, you know, as I drive through certain neighborhoods still in our community, there's one that's a real eyesore for me, and I just haven't gotten the guts to get out and really talk to these young people about, you know, the way they gather and throw trash all over the place. And you know, but it's how would you recommend that we get, particularly, I mean, it's good to hear Lafayette and the folks from Broccoli City talk about what they're doing, but there's still an element in our community, and I shouldn't just say young people, but there's still people in our community just think that the earth is a trash can, that if they have something that they don't want anymore, they can just toss it out the window or just throw it on the ground. How do we get people out of that mindset?
It's tough, and I don't really have the answer to that, but we do. We partner with Alice Ferguson Foundation. They run the Trash Free Potomac River Initiative, and some years back they did a focus group. They found people who, you know, admit that they littered regularly, and they asked them, you know, why do you do that? What's some of your attitudes related to that? And what they found out that for a lot of people, it had to do with sort of freedom and power. Like when people are marginalized and poor and don't feel like they have a lot of control over their lives or what happens to them, what to do with their trash is something that they do control. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, an act of rebellion to say, you can't tell me what to do with it. So the message that they developed for their anti-littering campaign was take control, take care of your trash. And also your litter hits close to home. Because another thing they found out was that people were focused on trying to keep trash out of their home, like their immediate personal space, which a lot of people define just as their apartment, their house, their car, and everything outside of that was not their responsibility. And so people would throw stuff out of their home or out of their car on the street. And so the idea of your litter hits close to home is to try to expand that notion of home to include your street, your neighborhood, everything around you. So they have these lawn signs that say your litter hits close to home, take control, take care of your trash. We put those up in the areas that we clean. And we also, when we go to ANC neighborhood association meetings, we offer those up for homeowners who want to put those on their lawns. And kind of, we haven't done a scientific study of it. I guess the jury is still out on whether that impacts people's thinking or not. But you know, the main thing is just cultural norms, peer pressure. If the people who you're hanging out with are not littering, then you're probably not going to litter. If they are, then you probably are.
Yeah.
So
well,
that's part of why we are park stewards. In addition to actually doing the work to improve the physical condition of the woods, they're also involved in our community outreach and talking to people, trying to change some of that mindset. Tommy was talking earlier about the bag law. Something that we've noticed is that a lot of people at the Giant here on Alabama Avenue are not bringing bags, and they are paying the fee. And so we got from DOE, we got these bags, you know, that fold up. They're real small. They'll fit in your pocket or your purse, and then they open up into a nice big shopping bag. And we designed a Ward 8 Woods flyer that fits into the folded up bag. And before the quarantine started, gave out about 2,000 of those, both in front of the Giant and at the metro stations. Because that's a simple way that people can contribute. They can help reduce the amount of trash that they're generating and save a little bit of money every time they shop.
Well, Nathan, I want to thank you for actually taking this time with us, and for all, like I said, that you're doing to help to clean up the environment, particularly in your own backyard, which is my backyard as well, right here in Ward 8. That's where it starts. And, you know, we want to continue to find ways to support what you all are doing, not only through volunteers, but also helping to increase the funding. So, you know, you've got a partner here with the Washington Informer. And we want to keep the lines of communications open and see what else we can do to share. How can people contact you if they're interested in volunteering?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, you're breaking up. I love that technology.
I know. It's
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I hope everyone will visit our website, ward8woods.org. We have a page for each of the parks. You can learn some of the lesser known history about each of these parks. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Ward 8 Woods. And if you're looking to get out and exercise and enjoy nature a little bit, I know I've heard that some of the trails like at Roosevelt Island and Rock Creek Park have been like overcrowded. It hasn't been safe, but you know, we're trying to change the fact that not many people get out in the woods of Ward 8, but for the time being, it's kind of helpful that you can go out and have it to yourself. And I mentioned we've been working on trails. They're right behind the Anacostia Museum, which is across from the Fort Stanton Rec Center, 1800 block of Erie Street Southeast. There's something called the George Washington Carver Nature Trail, which was created by staff of the museum back in the 90s. And it was in recent years not really maintained or used, but we just recently raked the leaves off of that trail and removed some of the falling trees. And we're going to be making more improvements in the coming months, but it's a really beautiful place. It's a nice, easy half-mile loop that starts right behind the museum and brings you back to that same spot. So we invite everyone to go out and enjoy that as long as you practice your social distancing.
All right, sounds good. Nathan, take care, stay safe, and have a happy Earth Day.
All right, you too.
So great to have a person now I guess I can almost call a friend, even though we're always talking business. And that is Sandra Madhavu Fry, who is the People's Counsel of the District of Columbia. Some of you all may have heard of the Office of the People's Counsel. Well, it's her office, because she is the People's Counsel, and she's the one that protects us in many areas. And I know we talked before, Sandra, about how little people may know about your office.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an opportunity to come through, and we've talked before, and I am just amazed at all of the information and services your office provides. So let me start first by saying Happy Earth Day.
Well, thank you, Denise. Happy Earth Day to you as well. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And I was really excited to have an opportunity to speak with you on Earth Day, because Earth Day is really, really so important. It's local, national, and really global. I don't know, I can remember, my first few Earth Days back in the 70s, I guess it was, not to give my age out.
This is the 50th anniversary, so you're right.
That's right. And I can recall, standing in the circle and holding hands, all the way across the city. And it was so moving, so empowering at that time. And we've come a long, long way, but the issues are still there. And OPC, he said that it's my office, but it really is the people's office.
Right.
And I happen to be the person that's, in charge today. But it is really an institution, and we've been operating since the 70s, really. So we are coming up on almost on our 50th anniversary as well.
Okay. Before we go too deeply into that, though, one of the questions I've asked everybody is sort of your own personal voyage or exploration into environmental issues, environmental justice. When did you first become interested in issues related to the environment?
Well, that's a good question, Denise. And I did hear you ask that of the other speakers today. And interestingly, it really did start with my involvement with the Office of People's Counsel, because the second People's Counsel, Brian Lederer, who hired me, actually, he had a project. He was working with the White House, with the Jimmy Carter administration, and he established the Consumer Utility Board. And again, President Carter was very involved in promoting conservation and energy savings and efficiencies. And he had a whole panel that looked at, a whole task force type panel that looked at some of the energy issues that were plaguing the nation at the time, the oil embargo and various other aspects. And so the Consumer Utility Board then established a publication, which was, energy compensation for the public. I believe the publication date was 1978 or the early 80s. And so that was kind of my first introduction to the environment and the environmental issues that were percolating or that were developing in the district or being addressed in the District of Columbia. And then, once I came on board, it became part of what we did. It was always one of the considerations in formulating our policies. I mean, as I said, as far back as the 70s and 80s, that was a consideration, promoting energy efficiency, promoting, environmental action.
So your office, not only deals with issues of utilities and talk about, the different aspects of what your office covers.
Okay, well, yes, let me give you just a little bit of background.
Mm-hmm.
OPC is an independent agency of the District of Columbia, and we are representatives and advocates for all utility consumers. That is electric, gas, telephone, and most recently, water, which is really something that is very, very important to me on a personal basis. And our mission is to protect, advocate, and educate. And we do that in many different ways. One, we appear before the Public Service Commission, as well as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the FCC. Before the PSC, what we do is generally when the utilities are seeking rate increases or changes in their utility services, we represent the public interest. More often than not, those are trial-like proceedings, and we are the advocate. We are the voice of the people in those proceedings.
Mm-hmm. And so what quite often, what are the, I guess, the kinds of concerns that consumers come to you with the most? Is it about challenging rate increases? What do you see most often from
it runs the gamut, Denise. We see, it depends on where we are at a particular time. We've had rate cases that have really been that the public has shown an extreme interest in, and so therefore we will have large numbers of public participants in those proceedings. And because, as I mentioned, our mission is to educate and inform as well as advocate, we literally go out and we make certain that the public knows what's going on. Why is a rate case meaningful? What is their role in a rate case? Do they have a voice? Can they testify? Can they speak to the commission? And what we do is to facilitate that, to give them the tools that will enable them to present their views and concerns to the commission. One of the things that I've always said is that, when we go out, and I have a whole staff that goes out and talks with community groups, ANCs. As a matter of fact, we are now doing virtual ANC meetings. The ANCs are having their virtual meetings, and we are presenting because it's important to keep those lines open.
I'm sure the attendance has grown as well, so it's not all bad.
But when we go out and we present, it's not just a one-way conversation. It is a two-way conversation, because more often than not, we get information and concerns that we can then take to the commission to have them address those concerns. For example, years ago when we had third-party suppliers, the issue of third-party suppliers came to us really as a result of our going out into the community and people saying, oh, these people are coming to us, they're knocking on our doors, and we telling us to sign up, and I signed up, got this great price, and then the price escalated, exponentially in the next month. And we were able to really go to the commission and get some relief for those consumers. So it's a two-way street. We are educating and informing, and they are providing us with their concerns and feedback, which allows us to really effectively advocate before the Public Service Commission and FERC and other regulatory bodies and the City Council.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that that we think about during Earth Day are environmental issues, and water is like at the top of the list. I mean, we're talking about situations like Flint, Michigan, with all the lead-based pipes and the lead in the water and the impact that that's had on that community not to get clean water. And that's happening in cities all across this country because of the infrastructure. There's the water quality issue, and we've had some of that here in the District of Columbia. Your office is not responsible for that. But the other thing that we've noticed over the years is that once upon a time, you get a $10 water bill and you were happy. All of a sudden, we're spending as much on water as we are on gas and electric. I think those rates sort of slid in on a lot of us, and we just opened up our water bills one day and saw these different amounts. But when there are issues with that is under your purview. Is that right?
Yes, and that's one of the things is that, again, I had spoken with some of the previous People's Counsel, and I know for a fact that the public had for a long time wanted OPC to represent them, and it just didn't happen. But as you said, as rates began to continually increase, and when they started increasing exponentially, there was a crescendo of outcry where the public was saying, no, this is unacceptable. When the bills went from, $10 a month to, $300 a month or more, depending on your usage and depending on whether or not you are a residential customer or a church. And the public was demanding that something happen. And there were a number of council hearings, as you may recall, where the council was trying to determine, what should be done. And as a result, they passed the DC Water Consumer Protection Act in 2018, which gave OPC the authority to represent the public in those issues. And what really was driving the increases was actually the recovery as a result of the settlement with the EPA to clean up the Anacostia. There was that recovery of those costs, and those were like CREAC costs that had to be recovered. And so that's what was really making the increases so high, or making it such a burden on consumers. And particularly, it was affecting like the churches and nonprofits as well as residential consumers.
So on another note, I didn't get a chance to ask Tommy Wells' question, the Office of Energy. But, we are looking at more widespread placement of solar panels across the city, which in essence is supposed to save us money. And we're looking forward to this type of, new energy source for our residents, because it's also good for the environment. Does that, or can you predict whether, you're going to end up in a case involving solar energy and costs related to that? Has that come across your desk yet?
It absolutely, it absolutely has. And I guess that going back to the fact that OPC has always been involved in environmental issues, one of the things that I was able to do was to conduct a value of solar study in the District of Columbia. And that was the first study of that nature that was ever done in DC. And what it did was to show the potential for the implementation of solar in the district, and that it could be done, and it could be done in a cost-effective way. And that you're right, Denise, that solar and other DER type of measures really will reduce the cost to consumers. And I did hear Tommy talk about his Solar for All, not his, but the city's Solar for All program. And that is making significant inroads and grounds for making certain that not only do the upper income consumers have access to solar, but lower income consumers also can benefit from using solar. And that was one of my major concerns, to make certain that these new technologies, these solar technologies, the energy efficiency technologies, are equally deployed so that all consumers in all 8 wards can benefit. So when we did the value of solar study, a component of that was looking at the impediments that prevent or make it difficult for low-income consumers to receive the benefits, and what can be done to ameliorate that. And so they were companion studies. But yes, OPC has been very, very actively involved in solar, in DER, which is demand energy resources, and other sustainable, measures to make certain that we, one, because it's good for the environment, and 2, it's cost effective and will reduce costs. I saw a program, Newsbite, we're all inundated with COVID, presentations and news presentations, but it was interesting to look at how COVID is, in many ways, in terms of behavior, a precursor to, to what life could be, under a different type of circumstance. If our behavior changes one way or the other, even if it's a mandatory change or a change that we incorporate. But, the air is cleaner, in India. There's not as much traffic on our streets. So there are all sorts of changes that are occurring, or behavioral consequences of, the current times. So it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to continue to be a challenge, but it's going to be interesting, and it is in many ways empowering. And I think that one of your particular, this year's presentation or sustainability publication really did focus on that, that this is a time of challenge, but it's also a time of opportunity. And we just have to decide, where we're going to go and how we're going to do it, and then join hands and collaborate to actually achieve the types of results that we want to achieve, that need to be achieved.
Well, that's an excellent, I guess, close to our conversation, because I think, we are in isolation, but we realize now how much we need each other and depend upon the earth for survival. And so that's what this Earth Day means to me. But what does it mean to you?
It means that, and even more. As I said, it's an opportunity for us to look, ourselves in the mirror, to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to effectively, institute change. One of the things that I did want to, discuss just briefly, and this is sort of in concert with that, is that, as you know, we were very actively involved in assisting both the council and urging the utilities to implement, protections during the COVID pandemic, to make certain that there were no terminations for utility service, gas, electric, and telephone, and water. I contacted the utility officials, and they were very receptive. I don't want to suggest that they were not. And we also worked with the council to make certain that we had language in the legislation that would mandate that there could be no terminations. But in that, I also want to, and this is a message to the public and to my clients, to make certain that they do, while they're home, conserve energy, to make certain that they use some of the energy tips that we have been promoting for years. Turning off your water, don't unplug unused items, making certain your lights are not on in rooms that are unoccupied. Because what I personally fear is that once the moratorium is over, that consumers are going to be faced with bill shock, because everyone is home. As we talked about it, they're on the internet, the kids are on the internet, you have more people in the house all day. The bills are going to go up, and you can get lulled into a state of being comfortable until that bill comes. Now, what we can do is I'm encouraging consumers to contact our office at 202-727-3071, and we can assist them in making payment arrangements now, when they begin to see these high bills, which ordinarily would result in a disconnection, but are not, so that once the moratoriums are lifted, the bills are not as high, and they have already established a relationship with the utilities for continued payment. In addition, I have a COVID committee, in-house committee, and what we're trying to do is, what we're doing is coming up with other measures that will protect consumers, during and after the lifting of the moratorium.
Well, that's fantastic, and that shows why you are our People's Counsel, because you seem to be thinking far ahead of the people to help us to, some things that we don't even think about, that until it hits us, you are already there and protecting our interests and our rights. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And
thank you very much. I really, really was excited to participate, and I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Oh, by any means necessary. We had to make it happen. And I haven't given a shout out to Dr. Chantella Sherman, who, put that special issue together for us. She's in charge of all of our special issues. But again, she and Ron in our office and so many others wanted to make sure that, one, we are grateful to the People's Council for being a part of that issue and also for being a part of this show. So I want you one more time to give out that phone number because I know people are going to need it.
Okay, certainly. We can be reached at 202-727-3071. That's 202-727-3071. And my website number is opc-dc.gov. And please reach out to us. My staff is working as we speak remotely, teleworking. And they're taking complaints. They are listening. They are participating in virtual meetings in the evening. So we are definitely all hands on deck, but just individually.
Wonderful, wonderful. Give Dotsie our regards. You know, she's a hardworking sister that you have over there doing.
Yes, she absolutely is. I don't know what I would do without her.
One thing Washingtonians can take pride in is its beautiful rivers and landscape, the trees, so many other beautiful places that we have in the city. The Anacostia River, of course, is one of those locations. And people on both sides of this river can appreciate all that the Anacostia has to offer. Its glory, its history, and the fact that the river itself is constantly being worked on. Environmentalists are now trying many ways in the city itself to clean up the Anacostia River so that it can be a place of family fun, fishing, and other kinds of water sports. What makes this special is that it's our river. But what makes it painful is what we, as residents of the District of Columbia and those upriver in Maryland, are doing to the Anacostia River. If you may ask what that is, it's right here. You can see it all over the banks of the river. Plastic bottles, metal cans, glass bottles, plastic bags, aerosol spray cans. None of this stuff gets here on its own. We, the human beings that live in this city, that live along the river, that drive past this river, that cross these bridges, decide that it's not important enough for us to take our refuse and just throw it away in a place where it can be easily recycled. We find it easier to just toss it out the window or throw it aside. And this is where it ends up, right along the banks of the Anacostia River. But on this Earth Day, I just ask you, think about it the next time you're driving or walking down the street. Just hold on to that piece of garbage, a plastic bottle or whatever it is that you might have, and find the nearest trash can, or take it home and recycle it. But the worst thing you can do to this environment, to the city, to the future, and to the next generation